Yes, indeed.
Hello, boys and girls.
Good
Welcome,
evening.
welcome, welcome, one and all, to another episode of Extra Credits Book Club. We've done it. We've finished Killing Floor by Lee Child.
Mm-hmm.
And thank God for that.
Yeah, I was ready to be done with this book.
Because it's weird, right? I enjoyed every second of this book except for some parts. And it's
Mm-hmm.
purely because of the reader of the audiobook that I was like, oh, come on, get it over with.
Yeah,
Because
he just takes his time.
if I was reading it myself, I would have been having the time of my life. But this reader really made it a little long in the tooth.
Yeah, he's like the oldest man in the world, and it can be really nice to listen to him read for like the first 10 chapters of this. I was like, this is lovely. Like he's just going at his own pace. But then you get into the end of the book and it's like insane action. And he's reading it like he's just gossiping to you on a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, and that's. I think I had to reread or re-listen to sections of this book more than I ever have in the entire life of this podcast. I
Really?
never ever go back and re-listen to stuff because normally I can
Okay.
hear it and I pick it up. But this time I had to go back and listen to two different chapters, a total of like 5 times.
Mhm.
I
I had a
was
similar experience.
furious. But we read chapters 25 through
34?
34,
Mhm.
which was about 5 hours.
Yeah.
Because all of them were like 40 minutes apiece. Let me tell you, dear listener, not a lot happened. Except for the very end, when a whole bunch happened, but you wouldn't be able to know
No.
if you were just casually listening. The way that the reader brings to you action, you're like, okay, more stuff. Go. Wait a minute, someone just died. Hold on, I have to go back. Why?
Yeah, someone's entire head just exploded? Jesus.
Right. And when we last left our hero, Jack Reacher, he was on his way to New York to talk to a professor who knew a lot about counterfeiting. Question mark?
Yeah, and his life was in danger.
Right.
And that's why Jack needed to rush to New York because this professor was on a list that his brother had on him,
Right.
and he contacted the first professor on the list had previously been murdered. And so he has now found out that this new professor has a lunch date with the two guys that have been tailing him and murdering people this whole time, right?
Yes.
Okay. Or are they still alive? No, yes, they are.
He kills two different people.
He kills a lot of people over the course of this book, but specifically in the last like 4 chapters.
And on his. I dare not deign to bore anybody by discussing what the fuck Jack Reacher and the professor talked about because it is 40 minutes of the process of counterfeiting money. What kind of paper would be needed? What makes up that paper? How there's no real way to do it perfectly except for one way.
Yeah.
But that one way is impossible because the paper that it would need is only made by one company And that one company don't give it up for nobody except for the government.
Yeah. They talk about the paper to linen proportions that need to be involved in the composition, and how Joe, his brother, was working really closely with this professor to try and uncover, like, what this big counterfeiting operation is. And, like, where there's 2 we also find out there's 2 known big counterfeiting operations internationally. There's one in the Middle East, and there's one in
Yeah.
Venezuela, which I look at that. It's run by the Kleiners,
Right.
and
And this is where I start to go, are you paying attention, Jack?
yeah.
How many times in this book has someone said, "Oh, well, the Kleiners moved their chemical operation to Venezuela." And he's like, "Oh, okay." And this professor is sitting here talking about how there's a massive counterfeit money production in Venezuela, and he's like, who could this be? Who would do this? Like, and I made a note later on that Jack Reacher's, like, the way he acts and presents himself in this book is incongruous with his ability. Because he is, the book tells us and shows us that he's really good at his job. Like, he's really good at finding people, he's really good at fighting, he's a great shot. But the way he acts and talks to himself in his inner monologue, he's a fucking idiot who would not have these kind of abilities.
He's a himbo in his own mind, the way he talks to himself,
Yeah,
and he has, like, a sense of childlike wonder that I wasn't expecting.
yeah. There's a lot of like stuff where I'm like, you guys are grown men. Stop it. Like later on, they're like splashing in proverbial puddles, and I'm like, stop. You're grown men. But all this lesson in counterfeiting, Jack Reacher's like, okay, cool. Anyway, see you later. I better get back to Georgia now. And on his way out, the Hispanic guys that have been plaguing him since his arrival are there like, all right, pal, I got a gun. And at this point, when he said, the reader, Dick Hill, the narrator for the book, said something like, because if he was gonna shoot me, he would have done it already. I was like, huh? What's happening?
Mhm.
Why is there a gun out? So then I had to go back and because I had zoned out. Because you can't
Yeah.
imagine how much fucking talk about counterfeit process there is.
40 minutes of it. And then I think the important takeaway from that conversation that Reacher has with his name's Professor Kalstein, I think, is that the other professor had apparently figured out how one of these counterfeit operations was working and
Yeah,
left it on a voicemail, and that's why he was murdered.
right. That's the whole kit and caboodle is, and also one of my biggest pet peeves about this entire block of chapters is everybody in the story has figured out the mystery, and no one bothers to tell the fucking reader except for the
Yeah.
very end.
Like, Reacher will have all these plans, and he'll explain something as something's happening. He'll be like, "Oh, we're gonna go to, like, Augusta and visit this
Right.
person who you've never heard of before." And I'm like, "What the fuck? Did I miss something?" And I'm rewinding, trying to figure out when they had mentioned this person before, and it turns out that's the first time, and so
Yeah.
you're kind of, like, you're the last person to find anything out.
Yeah. And it doesn't feel good.
No.
But I honestly don't remember how Reacher deals with the Hispanic guys.
He essentially just, like he's like, "I'm not gonna come into your car." peace, and then he leaves. Like, that's really all that happens. And
Yeah,
they're like, oh, but
that's
we have guns.
that's kind of what I gathered, is that he was like, do something about it, and they're like, oh,
Yeah, we weren't expecting that.
he's so big.
Carry on. Yeah, but he gets back to Atlanta. He's in the short-term parking lot in the Bentley where he left it. Has a
Right.
little siesta. And then Officer Baker, the dirty cop, is like knocking on his window. And then I think they started exchanging vague threats. And then they go out for like a little coffee date.
Yeah. Yeah. Chapter 26, when he gets back from New York, is a complete blur to me.
Nothing happens.
A lot happens.
Oh, that's when. Oh, okay. I'm getting this mixed up with the chapter after.
Because he goes out to his little coffee date with Baker. And they kind of dance around the conversation topic for a while. But Baker knows that Jack knows what he's up to. He knows that Baker's a bad guy. And he's just like, don't do anything stupid. And he's like, oh, I won't. I'm just going to go back to Hubble's house and stay there for a while.
Yeah.
And he's like,
get
yeah,
some paperwork.
good idea, punk. And Reacher's like, I'm going to head out now to Hubble's house. So then he goes there, and there's this like 2-paragraph description of ambushes and how sometimes to beat someone to an ambush, you gotta wait. Sometimes it's waiting an extra 5 minutes. Sometimes it's waiting 5 hours, 5 days, a week.
5 years.
Yeah. And I'm just like, okay, I get it. You could have stopped at days.
Yeah.
But a storm starts a coming.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts pouring rain. And then guys show up. And I will describe this to you in a way that it was described to me. It's raining. Guys turn up in, like, CSI suits. And they break in. And also track mud in the house. Jack kills one with a knife. And then he goes around and kills another one by breaking his neck. And then the third one, he knocks into the pool and drowns him. And then Jack gets tired and goes and makes some coffee inside.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. He's very, like, matter of fact. He's going through the motions at this point.
It's very...
But it,
like...
it could be so cinematic. Like, there's, like, lightning, and it's like... I feel like if you read it yourself and you could do your little mind palace, like, reader's theater in your head, it would be
like,
fucking epic.
I can already, in my mind's eye, I can already see how the TV show's done it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's pouring dogs and cats. These guys in white suits are coming out of the bushes. And slowly
He's got his mascara camouflage paint.
Yeah. Waiting somewhere in the house. And then
I think he's outside the house, isn't he?
I don't know.
I think he was like watching them go in. But it was weird because I was never sure if he was outside of the house or in the basement.
My only note for that whole chapter is in the deluge.
That's your one note?
Yeah, because he said the word deluge way too many times.
Yeah, he did. But one of the people he murders is the Kleiner boy.
Yeah.
The drywall puncher, white boy summer, rich kid.
Yeah.
And then
to warn him off of Roscoe. He's like, you stay away from her. She's mine.
She's mine. And then he drowns him in the pool because he doesn't want it to be obvious that the Kleiner kid is dead. And then he's like, I have to hide his body somewhere so that Kleiner Sr. is like, where's my son?
Yeah.
Where's my boy?
And the whole time Reacher's like, I want that motherfucker to be wondering. I want him to be pondering where his son's at.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the kind of Jack Reacher that I like. I like this really vindictive, petty Jack
Hmm.
Reacher that's like, I want to make him twist.
Yeah. And when he's about to kill the Kleiner kid, he's like, if this was a movie, we'd have this heroic face off. I'd be like, this is for killing my brother. And they'd like have a full battle royale moment.
And it
But he
also
just he hits him on the back of the head and just drowns him. And it's very unceremonious.
it kind of reminded me of in the Jack Reacher movie when he does his little fist fight with the
Like at the
sniper,
beginning.
the snow at the very end,
Oh,
where he has his little fist fight with the sniper guy, and it's like raining, and it's super tense, and they're like having their little "you want your shot at the title" fight. That's kind of what I
right.
was imagining, but that's not what happened.
No, he just like clubs him.
Also, I have been getting so much better at imagining TV Reacher instead of Tom Cruise.
Yeah. It's way easier to imagine him now that we've seen like the first couple episodes too. And I'm like, he's more of what this should be. Like,
Yeah, big
but
meathead.
I feel like the show so far really highlights how much of like a crime savant he is too. Like
Yeah,
I don't know why I'm not picking that up as much in the book, but I guess cuz he gets to have his little like and then this happened and he like goes back and traces everything that happened in every crime scene he's in.
right.
But
It's lost my train of thought. But anyways, he after helping himself from to the Hubble's house, and then there's like a whole like dissertation on a bunch of shit that doesn't make sense because my entire I've got 3 notes for this chapter, and all 3 of them are no, I've got more than that. It goes on to the next one. But most of my notes in this chapter are somebody better start fucking explaining, and this doesn't make any more sense really. And then oh,
yeah. He
because he's
basically
he's in the
like
car with Finley, right? He's in the car with Finley, and he's doing this obnoxious fucking move where it's like when someone is like, "Hey, guess what happened?" and you're like, "What?" and they're like, "No, guess." And you're like, I don't know. Why don't you just tell me?" And they're like, "No, I want you to guess."
he's really insistent. Like he will not give up any information.
Yeah, he really wants him to guess. And I'm getting pissed. Finley's getting pissed. And Jack's just like, I want you to guess. It's gonna be so good when you figure it out, dude. He's like, I'm not gonna figure it out. Just tell me.
Yeah, especially because he shows up, like he stays up all night reading these financial books that he finds in Hubble's office. And that's how he figures out the whole
Right.
game. And then he drives to go pick up Finley at like 5 a.m., wakes him up, and he's like, get in the car. We got to go somewhere. And he's like, what
Yeah.
the fuck? And then he's like, guess what happened? Guess how I figured this out. And he's just like,
I don't
I'm
fucking know,
exhausted.
dude. It's 4 in the morning.
Yeah. He just like most of the chapter is Reacher just like staying up all night reading money books, like all of these financial journals. And
But
he's just like getting real jazzed on everything he's learning.
but what it amounts to is that the Kleiners haven't been printing counterfeit money. They've been doing counterfeit alchemy, turning lead into gold,
Hmm.
where they've had Hubble gather up a bunch of $1 like singles, like $1 bills, and he collects all these $1 bills Then they bleach it so that the $1 denomination is erased from the bill, and then they print a 100 onto it.
Yeah.
So that they're changing ones to 100s. And when they're like, that's what E pluribus unum means backwards. And I'm like, now that you've explained it, it's a stretch. It's
From
a
one of
stretch.
many. Yeah, and they have 40 million tons of
Right.
$1 bills that they're stockpiling in this warehouse. And to prove their theory, Reacher's taking Finley to the Stallers apostrophe at the end of Stallers garage, because it's not Sherman Stallers garage, the one that burned down. It's Sherman Stallers parents' garage,
Yeah.
where they're finding one of the air conditioning packages, which is what they think is a bunch of $1 bills that are in the air conditioner package.
Yeah. The air
I
conditioner
think.
box, they've been stuffing all of the money, all of the ones into the air conditioner boxes.
Yeah.
And they
And
turn up and they're like, we need to see your garage. And the old lady's just like, well, okay. And they go in there and then they open it and spill all these ones out onto the garage floor. And then they start playing in it like children. They're like, wee! They're like
like
throwing it. They're high tenning as it's described in the book. And I'm like, that's not a thing.
that's so bitch. In my mind, it was like their version of the gasoline fight in Zoolander. Like they're just like
Yeah.
giggling and like throwing money at each other. And they're like, ah, like high fiving.
Just
It's
throwing
so,
wads
it's
of
just so
cash at
out
each
of
other.
pocket.
And then after their little playtime, they're like, okay, let's get out of here. And then they try
Yeah,
and stuff, they're like trying to cram the toothpaste back in the tube.
yeah.
And
And then
it
I
doesn't
guess,
work, so they just take the one that wasn't busted open. And they're like,
yeah.
we'll just leave that for the old folks. They'll appreciate all that cash, and we don't want to pick it up.
Yeah.
And then I think they're like, after that, they're like on their way back.
To the station house.
Yeah.
And Reacher's just like casually telling Finley about all the people he murdered. And
Yeah.
Finley's like, Jesus, dude, you killed 5 people. How do you feel about that? And Reacher's like, I don't know. How do you feel when you put roach powder down?
Yeah.
Finley's just like,
I really like that.
okay. Yeah,
He's like,
it's a
they're
good moment.
scum. Why would I feel bad about getting rid of scum?
Yeah.
Finley's like, damn, okay, bro.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think is Picard waiting for them at the station house? And they tell him everything.
Allegedly? No. No. They go to the station house, and I
Oh, they
think
call him first, I
they
think,
call
because I know they
him.
tell him. And he's like, well done, boys. And
Yeah,
then they
and
go
then
meet him.
he, when he turns up at the station house, it's the old double crosser Rooney. Picard's like, hold it right there, boys. The jig is up.
Mhm.
You guys are finished. It was me the whole time. And they're like, what? Picard, no. I thought we were friends. And he's like, ha ha, we weren't.
I felt so bad for Finley in this moment because he is genuinely heartbroken over this.
Yeah.
Like, this is one of his longtime friends. They've known each other for years and years.
Yeah.
And Picard is just like, I don't, haha, fucking joke's on you, bitch. And he's just like,
Yeah. He essentially, he's like, how could you do this to me? I thought we were friends. And he's like, I tried to warn you. Don't come out here.
yeah,
I was like, that's kind of a flimsy
yeah.
but I'm not a criminal, so I wouldn't know if that's justification or not.
This part is so weird though, because okay, so they get to the station. Kleiner and Teal are there,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Ooh, do we have something to show you guys?"
It's
And they
like,
have their big like villain moment, and they're
yeah.
waiting around the station, and they put on this tape recording of Roscoe being like full damsel in distress mode, being like, "Jack, come and save me!
Yeah.
They're gonna,
I
they're
need
gonna,
help.
they're gonna hurt me so bad."
They're gonna kill me. They're gonna do terrible things to me.
And
And then,
Teal and Picard and all them are just standing around like as this recording is playing.
yeah, and you know what I thought was weird is that when the three of them were in that room holding guns to Finley and Reacher, I I got the sense that this was like, because it's presented as if this is the villain reveal. They're like, it was us a whole time. And aside from Picard, I was like, yeah, we've been known.
Yeah, that was never up for question.
We been done know since
Yeah.
like chapter 10.
Since the minute you're introduced to Teal, you're like, "Oh, this guy, he's
Yeah.
real bad."
Reacher's just like, that guy's a bad guy. I can smell it on him.
Mhm.
But they're like, yes, it was us the whole time. And both Finley and Reacher are like,
How could you?
how can this be? And I was like, you guys have talked about how they're bad guys.
From day 1. But they play another recording, and it's Charlie being like, "They're gonna fuck my kids!"
Yeah, they're gonna chop off my kids' balls.
Yeah. And
And I
they're
was
gonna
like,
chop off my tits. And then they say things like, they start making all these weird old dude threats. They're like, "We're gonna sexually intrude upon Roscoe." And
yeah,
I'm like, why would you word it like that? That's so
because
awful.
sexually intrude makes it sound like they're gonna let her go out on a date, and then when she takes him back to a hotel, they're gonna barge in, be like, "Gotcha! You've been
Yeah.
sexually intruded on."
It's such bizarre wording.
Yeah, that's 1997 wording, if I've ever
Yeah.
seen it.
And then Reacher's basically just like, "Hey,
Okay.
Kleiner, where's your son?"
Yeah, that was the best thing he did. Where
Mhm.
all the bad guys were just like doing their like hands on hips, like, ha 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 ha, gotcha. You guys are so fucked. And then Reacher's like, hey, boy, you sure did get us, but I got a question for you. And Kleiner's like, yeah, go ahead. He goes, where's your son?
Yeah.
You heard from him? Where's he at? How come he's not here? Oh, wait. Wouldn't be that I fucking killed his ass in a pool. You know, he drowned like a bitch. And Kleiner's
Yeah.
just like, get him out of here.
He's out of town for a couple of days. I'm sure he'll be back soon.
Yeah,
But the whole reason that they're holding these women hostage is so that because they think Reacher and Finley know where Hubble is. They're like,
right.
"Bring us Hubble if you want to see your women again."
Yeah.
And they're like, "We don't fucking know where Hubble is. We thought he was dead."
And they're like, yeah, fat chance. Nice try. And I'm like, why would they lie about thinking he was dead? Like, if they thought he was dead, this would make your job so much easier.
Yeah, because he has all the like damning information and could expose everybody. So if
Yeah.
he's dead, like problem solved. But they don't believe that he's dead because they didn't kill him.
And then they're like, no, Reacher, listen, you're going to go get Hubble. You're going to take Picard with you. I don't want any funny business, young man.
Mm-hmm.
And Reacher's like, okay. So Picard and Reacher get into a car and they just start driving. Even though Reacher has no idea where Hubble is. Except he does. But we don't know that.
Yeah, this is one of those moments where like we're the last people to find out because I
Yeah.
think that it's mentioned that he looks at a map for a really long time,
Hmm.
and then he's like, "We're going to Augusta to find Hubble's friend Paul Lennon,"
Hmm.
and we're like, "What? Who? What?
And
Since when?"
did this confuse you? Because it didn't confuse me. Because having watched and read crime novels a lot, fake names are often their first real name and a fake one that they have a fondness for. So I knew Paul Hubble liked the Beatles,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
Paul
I'll be
Lennon.
honest. I was confused because I was like, I thought I missed something. I was like, I must have not just I thought it was a me problem. I was like, I must have missed when this man Lennon was introduced.
No, but like this is another instance of where this book takes a long time to do not much because we've gone through about 6 chapters, and that's a solid 2 hours, 3 hours of content that we've condensed down into 30 minutes.
Mhm.
There is so many words in this book to say very little. And
Yeah.
I have to imagine that it's because it's Lee Child's very first book. And he didn't, you know, everybody when they first start the fucking windbag.
Yeah.
Everybody's writing 6 paragraphs to say she came in the door. But it also makes it hard to do a podcast like a recap of this because in the time it takes us to talk about the same amount of chapters it would take for us to talk about like existentially or differently morphous. In the time it takes us to talk about half of differently morphous chapters, it takes us to talk about like 12 of this book.
Mhm.
And the chapters in this book are way longer.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And I'm not saying it's
This
a bad thing. It's just I think it's
no.
just first bookitis.
Yeah. I think this book has been the trickiest to talk about because it's both very just like, and then this happened, and then this happened.
Yeah.
But then they'll have these super long conversations where there's really only one main takeaway.
Yeah.
And the experience of reading it is probably nicer than the experience of listening to it because
Right.
when you're reading it, like there's times you can kind of zone out when you're reading and just like skim through it faster than when you have to listen to somebody enunciate every word.
That's tough.
Yeah, but I mean, to that point, it's also a good book to listen to if you like multitasking when you're listening to books, because you can kind of zone out and do your thing and like putter around and do whatever for a little bit and
Yeah.
like then come back to attention and not really have missed much. Like it's not hard to understand what's going on when you come back to
Yeah.
paying attention
Like
to it.
the mystery itself isn't particularly complicated. It's just really complicated to get there. Like the steps it takes to figure out the conspiracy and the mystery are way more than the actual complexity mystery itself, if that
Yeah.
makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
But in the process of Reacher driving out to Augusta with Picard and a couple of the Venezuelan thugs in tow. Like
Mhm.
they're following behind in a car, I think.
Yeah.
They get like a flat tire at some point.
Well, they go to a gas station
Yeah,
and Reacher's filling up the tank, and in the process of doing that, he grabs some cutlery that he nicked from the coffee shop he was at before and punctures the tire so
right.
that it will go flat like at some point down the road
Yeah,
so that he can stage like a little ambush.
yeah,
So he like discreetly punches a hole in the tire. No one notices. And then
right.
they're about 20 miles, I think, out of Augusta when the tire blows. And then they all get out of the car, and Reacher's like jumping around on the spot, pretending he's a chilly boy. And Picard goes to find the spare. And then I think this is when everything goes to shit.
Yeah, in
When,
the most bizarre way possible.
yeah, I had to listen to it a couple of times.
Like essentially, uh, Reacher. They never bothered to check Reacher for weapons at all
Yeah, that is weird.
because when he's outside pretending to be cold, he's got his coat on,
Mm-hmm.
which is where he keeps his giant hand cannon and also his knife. So he's
Yeah.
so he's pretending to be cold, and then when everybody's focused on doing the flat tire, he, in a move that I can only imagine seemed cooler in Lee Child's head than it actually was, he Reacher like cuts the tape on the box full of $1 bills, and the chilly wind picks it up and turns it into a dollar bill blizzard. And I was like,
In my mind, it looked like when all in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, when Uncle Vernon has been keeping all of the letters from Harry, and
yeah,
then that one day all the owls show up and like the avalanche
yeah,
of
it's
letters
just like
comes
a
down the chimney and out, and like he's like grabbing at the letters because a bunch of random people, like a bunch of rubberneckers, come through and start getting out of their cars and start like grabbing at the money hurricane.
yeah,
It's But,
and
like, while that's happening, he's, like, shooting Picard and the other guys, and
yeah.
these people are still stopping their cars on the side of the road to be like, "Money."
And again, I'll describe to you this action scene the same way it was described to me. When the dollar bill blizzard begins, Reacher jumps over the like concrete K rail into the shoulder, and he gets out his pistol. A guy jumps over the wall after him, and then he shoots him. And then the next
Mhm.
guy shoots him too. And then Picard is like, "Hey, come on now, let's not do this." And he's like, "Are you gonna shoot me if I come over?" "No." "Okay, I won't shoot you either." "Just kidding, I lied." And then he shoots Picard.
Yeah.
Then drives away.
And that's the end of the chapter. I just picture, like, a car pulled over, some dead guys, and then a bunch of randoms just, like, jumping around trying to gather up as much money as they can.
Yeah. I really wish the guy who was reading this book put just the tiniest bit of effort into making action scenes exciting.
Well, he did his best at one point when he was being Picard, yelling, like, his voice got really loud.
Yeah, I had to turn my volume down even
I
more.
I know. He was screaming at the top of his geriatric lungs
Are you
as
gonna shoot me?
yeah.
No.
He did his best.
Uh, and then after that the peak of excitement that this book has delivered so far, we get a 30-minute chapter in which Jack Reacher calls every single hotel in Augusta, Georgia.
Yeah.
And it's not like the book is describing him like, and then Reacher calls all the hotels in the area to find out if Paul Lennon is a guest there. It's, and then he calls this one and says, "Is there a Paul Lennon there?" No? Okay, thank you. Calls the next one. "Is there a Paul Lennon?" This does it 5 times before they're like, "Oh yeah, we have a Paul Lennon here," and he's like, "Great, where are you?"
Yeah. And he just shows up. Hubble's there. He's like, "How did you find me?"
Yeah, and then he tells us this absolute cockamamie story about counterclockwise movements and how people always use their real first name, and he knew there were 4 Beatles, so he just kept cycling through them.
That part was fucking baffling to me. He's like, "I knew this. So I picked the 4 names of the Beatles and I assigned them each to a day of the week and assigned a town in the circumference of Margrave because I knew you didn't have a car and I knew you didn't have credit cards. So you wouldn't be on a plane. So you were only on the bus.
Yeah.
So I figured you'd start here and then move in a counterclockwise direction, circumnavigating Margrave." And how did he know that?
He's good.
What, and like counterclockwise? Like,
Well,
I don't know.
to be fair, before he said that, I was imagining when he said all of these towns, like he was just circling Margrave and all these towns, I imagined it counterclockwise. So when he said most people subconsciously just go counterclockwise, I don't know how to explain it. They just do, and I was like, how dare you? I wasn't doing that. Stop. Shut up. And then we get another great batch of riveting dialogue of Hubble telling us everything we already knew.
Mhm.
Truly riveting stuff. Basically, he details because Hubble's getting so upset in the car, and Reacher's like, time to make small talk, keep his mind occupied. So he says, "How did you get involved with all of this?" And Paul Hubble goes, "Well, I'm glad you asked. I have a speech prepared." And then he just talks about how everything that we've already found out. He was fired from his job because the department was shut down. Kleiners hired him. He started doing criminal stuff, lost his taste for it, tried to get out, but was scared for his life, hired Jack's brother to help him get out.
Yeah.
Bish bash bosh.
Mhm.
Thanks, Paul, for explaining it 3 chapters from the end. Big appreciate.
Yeah.
But we get a cool jailbreak scene.
Yeah, I was super confused as to how this happened.
Well, they go back to Hubble's place on Beckman Drive.
Mhm.
And
And it's a disaster.
yeah, and he's like, "What happened to my house?" And Reacher's like, "Nothing."
I had a little ambush party here.
Yeah, don't worry
Don't
about
worry about it.
it. They get the other Bentley, and he's like, "I want you to follow me and follow my lead." And the plan is not explained, but basically they just crash their cars into the fucking police station.
Oh, that's all they do? Like, they didn't attach anything to the cars? They just drive through 3 layers of, like, fence and wall and other wall
Yeah,
and,
one
like,
like
manage to break into a jail cell because of it?
Reacher drives through the front, smashes through the front door, and into the main lobby, and then backs out, and Hubble comes in and crashes into the jail cell,
Oh, okay.
and then they both leave with Finley.
Who's probably quite shaken at this point.
He's all right.
And they do it in 90 seconds flat.
Yeah, without preparation, without practicing, without doing the Fast and Furious 6, where they're practicing drifting in the garage. None of that.
Right.
They just do it first try, easy peasy. Fucking easiest thing
Yeah.
I've ever done.
No montage necessary.
And then we have a little bit of Hubble complaining about holding his widow neck in the car crash.
Oh yeah. There's like some cute little tender moments in this chapter.
Are there?
Like, well, like Reacher like is very caring towards Hubble. He's like, "Get out, move your legs," and he like walks with him up and down this alley. And I
Yeah.
think like he and Finley have like a little like reunion where they're like looking into each other's eyes and like reassuringly gripping each other's shoulders and like Finley says something or Reacher says something to Finley at some point and Finley nods and in Reacher's description it's like a partner would nod.
Right.
And they're really bonded at this point, I think.
Yeah.
But they go to the barber shop to hide out for a while.
Yeah, because they have to formulate a plan of how they're going to assault the warehouse. Because that's
Mhm.
where they figured out is the only place that the ladies are being kept.
Mhm.
And in the process, they meet the barber's sister, the aforementioned sister, who knows Blind Blake, and we finally close the loop on this fucking Blind Blake saga, where it
Do
turns
we
out.
ever?
And one of my notes is, so help me God, if Blind Blake just died of natural causes, I'm gonna throw a fucking fit. Because he's like, what happened to him? What happened to him? And she's like, oh, in 400 years, nobody's ever asked me that. I'm like, what is the big deal? What do you, if he, like, this is when I was like, if it just turns out that he died of cancer, I'm gonna eat this book. But it turns out that's not the case. He died in a much more terrible way.
Yeah.
As Blind Blake, being a blind man, out walking around in the times of Jim Crow, had the audacity to bump into a white man walking on the street.
Mhm.
And that white man beat Blind Blake to fucking death.
Yeah. Well, didn't he bump into a child?
Yeah.
And then the child was like, "Murder this man, daddy."
Daddy, kill the bad man. And then he did. And
Brutally.
yeah. And then, like, as she was telling the story, they're like, he beat him with the cane with a diamond on it. And I was like, oh, that's Teal.
Yeah.
Who, no one else has a cane with a fucking giant diamond on it.
Except for fucking Ratigan from The Great Mouse Detective.
Yeah. And Reacher, who has made personal note of a gaudy cane with a giant diamond on it, is like grabbing this ancient woman by the shoulders, like, who was it? Who did it? And I'm like, you
Yeah.
know who. If I figured it out, you could.
Yeah.
And then she's like, it was Teal. And he's like,
That does it.
that's it. That's the last straw. Never mind that he kidnapped my girlfriend or that innocent woman and her children. That man killed Blind Blake.
My reason for living.
Yeah. And that's when they all get ready and decide to go to war at the warehouse to do a final confrontation, the big action scene at the end of a book.
Yep.
And surprisingly, boring.
Yeah. In this medium
In
specifically.
this medium, in the format of an audiobook where Dick Hill is reading it to us, it is a fucking snooze.
Yeah.
But the actual content is so fucking dope.
Yeah.
Uh but it takes forever. to get to that.
I
They
felt like
they sit
they like
and lurk around this warehouse for about 4.5 days.
yeah.
And they're just like looking in through the windows. They're like, hey, there they are. There's the ladies. Look, they're shoveling money. Literally.
Okay, I love how he had to kind of like further explain what a shovel was, though. He was like, like those curved plastic things that they use up in the snow states. I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, like a
Like a
shovel.
snow shovel.
Like the fact that there needed to be another sentence
He
contextualizing a shovel,
Listen,
I was like,
Lee Child is British. Probably never seen one before, so he felt the need to explain it extra.
yeah, the things they use in the snow states.
Yeah. Up in the snowy parts of America. But the ladies are using these snow shovels to shovel money into the air conditioning boxes from what is described as a monumental mountain of cash.
Yeah, a dune of money. Can I read one quote? I wrote it down
Yes.
because it was the most like it's very rich prose and it's so fantastical to describe Jack's awe and wonderment at this mountain of money. And I was like, he's really going into detail about this, but he sees this mountain of money and he's like, it was awesome. It was a fantastic scene from a fairy tale, like a huge underground cavern in an emerald mine in some glittering fable, all brightly lit by the 100 arc lights. And it's the most detail we've gotten about how something
Anything.
looks next to Roscoe in her yoga pants. Or no, Roscoe doing her pantsless hotel room yoga.
Right. But that's just how big that money is. It's
$40 million in singles.
He had to use the literal definition of awesome.
He
The
did.
the actual definition where it is something awe-inspiring. It is so massive that Jack Reacher was awestruck.
Yeah.
But they decide, like, Reacher's formulating a plan because I think at this point they've been sneaking around. They gave Baker the old karate chop.
Yeah, that's right. And they get the kids out
Yeah,
somehow.
because they're lurking around. They see Baker, and then Jack Reacher does like the GoldenEye 64, like whoosh, and knocks him out. And then they take him away, and then they find the kids totally asleep. And Reacher has a moment where he nearly bursts into tears
Yeah.
out of relief of having to deal with sleeping children rather than panicked ones.
Yeah. Like he was like, my luck had turned. I was the luckiest man in the
Yeah,
world.
I was like,
This is the best possible outcome.
relax.
Yeah. The
Fine.
kids were asleep.
But he tells Finley and Hubble to take the kids back to the car or whatever.
Yeah,
And
that's essentially exactly what he says.
that's when he scopes out the warehouse, and that's when he sees the awesome dune of money.
Yeah.
And they have this plan where they're going to create a distraction by pouring gasoline out in front of the rolling shutter door so that it seeps under and gets the money wet. And then Finley, got his name for a second, would light the gasoline so that it would light the fire or the money on fire. I was like, okay, now we're talking. This is gonna be good.
Yeah.
And
The
meanwhile, Reacher is waffling on what to do because he's like, if I shoot Teal first, then Kleiner will kill me. But if I shoot Kleiner first, then Teal will shoot me and kill the women at the same time. What do I do? I can't shoot
Mm-hmm.
both of them at the same time. I've only got one gun. What do I do? I'm like, I mean, you've already solved the problem for yourself. Why are you talking about it still?
Yeah. The way they describe the smell of the money is so gross too. It's like because Reacher's worried that when Finley pours the gasoline, that Teal perched atop wherever he is on the money mountain will like smell the gas. But
Right.
because it's $40 million in singles, it smells like a disgusting grease pit in there.
Yeah.
And that's just gross.
Yeah. But I forget what exactly started it. I don't know if it was the fire that started the chaos or Reacher deciding to leap at the opportunity because someone had put their gun down.
I think Teal puts his gun down and Reacher shoots him in the head. And I think that's what starts
No, it
everything.
was it was Kleiner that put his gun down, and that's why he shot Teal.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
But Teal gets absolutely nuked. Like his head pops,
Yep.
and it's described in the least exciting way possible.
Yeah.
And then there's this prolonged fucking descript. Like it's like someone turned on the Matrix bullet time and just left it on.
Yeah, for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
5 excruciating minutes.
Reacher is talking about how people are moving in slow mo forever. Like
Yeah.
he's trying to zero in on Kleiner, who's jumped across the warehouse, and he's just following him with this gun. Like, what is he gonna do? I can't shoot him. Well, I wonder what he's gonna do. I better keep looking at him. Uh-oh. Someone else is coming through. Uh-oh, the money's catching on fire. The girls are moving now. This is gonna cause a problem. Like, oh my god, let's move along here.
Yeah, it's like you forget that real time ever existed by the time he stops describing the scene of his individual hands moving and he's looking on in like this detached perspective and like
It went on for so long that I don't remember how Kleiner was killed.
I don't remember either. I genuinely don't know if they ever told us if maybe he was just left to die in a money fire. Was he like did
He
he
had
did
to
he
because
mention how he died?
he grabbed the shotgun and then things transpired and then all of a sudden uh he wasn't a problem anymore and then fucking like Super Shredder from the second Ninja Turtles movie burst through the fucking doors like "Rah!" And it's Picard somehow.
Yeah, how is he not dead?
Great question. But he's like
Like
covered in blood and he's
yeah, he's like shambling out with a gun.
and him and Reacher get into this dope fight where like the money's catching on fire all around them and they're having like a little doosh, doosh, doosh fist fight.
Mhm.
I'm like, this is gonna look sick in the TV show.
Yeah.
But listening to it described to me is the worst.
Mhm.
And I forget what happened, but Finley ends up shooting Picard like 8 times in the back. And
Yeah,
then
that's essentially all that happened.
Reacher shoots him 4 more times in the head.
Yeah, well, gotta
Just to
make
make
sure. I mean, he
sure.
came back from the dead. Yeah. And he
Uh
falls in what's described as an explosion of blood.
yeah.
Like vampire being staked is how I pictured it.
Yeah, from
Like in
Blade.
True Blood. Oh yeah, like in Blade too. Yeah,
Uh,
like not True Blood. I never watched that actually.
no one has. And then the warehouse explodes and the fire catches like it catches on fire, it bursts because it's superheated oxygen.
Right.
And then the fire catches into like all of the tractor oil and manure. So it's essentially like a hillbilly nuclear weapon went off.
Yeah.
And then they're just like, and then they start celebrating. They're like, yes! They're like high
Yeah.
fives all around, hugging, kissing, tears of joy, like they just landed a rocket on the moon.
Yeah, like Reacher gets the slow motion screaming women out of the
Yeah.
warehouse, and then they're like they all just essentially start aggressively making out.
Yeah, everybody's kissing and hugging, even the guys.
Yeah. Group hugs all around. It's like the money kicking celebration scene, but
Yeah.
without the money this time.
Then comes the most bizarre chapter, whole book, the last chapter, where Reacher and Roscoe hash out their relationship that was doomed from the start.
Yeah, like the whole book, he's so obsessed with her. He's like, I can picture living here forever, even though I've never lived anywhere longer than a week. And he is like, imagine, like earlier in the book, he's imagining settling down with her. And
Yeah.
then the first line in chapter 34 is, it didn't really work out for
Yeah.
Roscoe and me.
It never worked out. There were too many problems. And really, the problems were A, she didn't like that he's super good at murder and kind of okay
Yeah.
with it. And I'm like, get over it. He saved your life. And B, he's leaving.
Yeah, he doesn't want to draw more attention to himself because he just got his like life to himself six
Right.
months ago. So
Also,
he doesn't want to
he's
get tied up.
that and he killed about 15 people.
Well, that's neither here nor there. He doesn't want to be,
Granted,
he just doesn't want to get involved with the government.
yeah, most of the police in the city were casualties of his murder
Mm-hmm.
because they were all dirty cops. But like, there's nothing that happens in this other than Roscoe and him talk it out. And they're like, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if this is going to work. Anyway, good luck in all of your future endeavors. I wish you nothing but the best. Good luck in life and stuff. Also, here's a
Yeah.
picture of your brother and also my
And
phone
my,
number.
and my phone number on the back.
Please don't put your phone number on a picture of my brother, please. Thanks.
But he has this little like indie movie moment when he's like on the bus out of town, he's crying a little bit. And like I just imagine he's probably listening to some sad song in the stereo in his head. I just picture him like leaning against the window, like his eyes are all misty,
Yeah. I'm gonna
looking
miss
at the picture.
I'm gonna miss you, Georgia.
Yeah, he's far more emotional than one would expect.
I don't like it.
Oh, I doubt the show will convey
Oh,
that
I hope
part.
not. But that's it. Like the book ends with him saying, and it was a picture of my brother Joe with her phone number on it. But I didn't need it because I had already committed it to memory.
The end.
The end. My name's Dick Hill, and if you enjoyed what you just heard, kidding, that's the actual end.
But he does introduce himself.
That's true. I did enjoy him, kind of.
Yeah, I did at the beginning. And then I was like, come on,
So,
pick it up.
would you recommend this book?
I'd give it a solid 3 out of 5 stars,
Whoa,
I think.
a 4. I was just going for a yes or no answer.
Well, I would recommend it to any fans of like actiony novels. I don't know.
Sure.
I personally do not feel compelled to read any more Jack Reacher novels. I'm good that there's a show now and I can enjoy it that way.
Yeah, and if you are curious, the first season of the Jack Reacher show aptly titled Reacher on Amazon Prime, is this book.
Yeah.
So you don't have to put up with a boring narrator.
So far, it's a really good show too. Like it fixes some of the pacing issues of the book, but keeps it true to like the narrative and the characters.
Hmm?
And I feel like the casting choices are pretty solid.
Yeah. Reacher is as meatheady as he should be. Not
Yeah.
Tom Cruise.
Yeah. Would you recommend this book to people?
Oh. Maybe, I don't know, because I'm curious to see how the other ones are.
Yeah. It's hard to judge a series by the first book, especially when it's the author's first book.
Yeah. Like, it's fine, but it's also the habit of getting in its own way.
Mm-hmm.
But, in more important news, now that we've finished that book, we have to pick a new one. And we've got a whole selection.
Yeah. There's no crime novels in this roster, but
We've
there is
got,
some terrifying choices.
first on the list, let's bring up the old wheel. We've got If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio, right?
Uh-huh.
We've got Anxious People by Frederick Backman. A Brightness Long Ago by Guy Gavriel Kay. Six of Crows by Leah Bardugo. And Ice Planet Barbarians by Ruth Dixon. A fine smattering of potential disasters.
Mm-hmm.
And am I nervous? This
I think
weapon
you should be.
is swinging? Yeah, a little
I'm
bit.
nervous.
The last thing I ever want to do is read anything by Leah Bardugo ever again. But here we go!
I'm scared. And I'm going to find out after you, too.
No!
Is it
It's
hers?
Six of Crows!
Oh, boo.
I knew it was gonna happen. I knew it.
I don't think it can be worse than Kingdom of the Wicked.
Yeah, you're right. Still not happy about it though.
Would you rather have read Ice Planet Barbarians?
No, that was gonna be absolute fucking trash.
I'm actually kind of sad it didn't get picked.
Yeah. But because I have a feeling that Ice Planet Barbarians is the same level of trash as Mind Bullet, which is what we're reading with Fultor 2 weeks from now.
Mm-hmm.
And that book is plenty garbage.
I still have to read the whole thing.
You haven't even started it?
No.
Well, you better get your...
I've parceled it out. I've written down. I have to do, even if I start it this weekend, if I do 5 chapters a day, I'm good.
5 chapters a day with that book will be about...
An hour a day.
Maybe.
Yeah.
They're
I'll be fine.
such short chapters.
I know this is I've done we had like I've known about this for so long and I was like, "Yes, great. I'll never get myself into the situation I did between Three Body Problem and Bosch ever again." And here I am again. And I knew that it would happen even though at the time I was like, "No, it will not." But it happened.
Get your Avett Brothers t-shirt on from their hit tour
Yeah.
and order Thai food.
Perfect.
This book is so fucking stupid. I can't.
How far are you in
I
it?
can't wait. Less than 10 chapters for sure. I'm on chapter 8. But Voltor has both of us beat. I think he's like halfway through.
Nice.
Or he's finished it. He wanted to read the print, like on his Kindle. I know that's how he usually reads his stuff. And then also read the audio. I'm like, this book is not
Whoa.
worth that, bud.
Thorough.
Book is bad. But anyway, that's all we've got for you this time. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks with Full Tour, right in between the two of us. Right where he wants to be. Where we talk about Mind Bullet by R.C. Bray. I think.
I don't know. All I know is that it's a book about a
No, it's
telekinetic assassin.
something. R.C. Bray is the narrator.
Okay.
Something Stevenson.
The illustrious something Stevenson.
Anyway, we'll see you guys then. And thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching. And this will be up on YouTube next week. Bye, everybody. Thanks.
Farewell.